The morning was still heavy with mist as I sat by the lake, the tip of my fishing rod resting gently against the calm waters. The soft sounds of the water lapping against the shore, the rustle of leaves in the trees, and the distant call of birds brought a rare kind of peace, one I hadn't realized I needed. Grandpa Henry had taught me to fish right here, more than 30 years ago. This was the spot, the place that had seen both my childhood wonder and the wisdom of the man who had shaped my life. Every cast felt like a memory, every ripple in the water a connection to the past. But as I reeled in my line for the third time, I heard her. Patricia Blackwell, the HOA president, storming toward me like she owned the entire lake. Behind her was Marcus Thompson, the HOA manager. Tall, built like a linebacker, but with the mental capacity of a garden gnome. Patricia was wearing her usual superiority like a badge, her perfectly coiffed hair tight enough to give her a permanent headache and a scowl that could freeze hell over. I knew exactly why she was here. "Excuse me, sir," she barked. "You're in direct violation of Homeowners Association Regulation 23C regarding unauthorized recreational activities in designated preservation zones." I glanced at her with feigned surprise, my line still moving slowly through the water. "I didn't realize fishing was a crime now, Patricia," I said, my voice calm, but my mind already on edge. I'd seen the strange surveying equipment around the lake recently, and something told me Patricia's sudden obsession with fishing regulations had more to do with the land than with any supposed rule. Her eyes narrowed, and she whipped out a thick folder, which she clutched like a weapon. "This lake and the surrounding area fall under strict HOA jurisdiction," she continued, "and fishing is prohibited without the proper permits." I let her finish, then asked, "Could you show me where these regulations are posted? I've been fishing here for decades. My grandfather fished here for 40 years. Henry made me promise to keep this sealed until you were ready," she said, the gravity in her voice making me pause. When the safe opened, it revealed stacks of old documents, photographs, and letters. The first thing I saw was the original deed to the entire lakefront development, dated 1962. It wasn't just the cabin lot. Grandpa Henry had bought 847 acres of land surrounding the lake, the entire place the HOA claimed to govern. My eyes scanned the pages. The Morrison family trust owned the roads, the lake, everything. Patricia had no claim to any of this land. "How is this possible?" I whispered, the reality of it sinking in. "How did they end up in control?" Ellie pulled out another stack of papers, letters between my grandfather and successive HOA presidents from the 80s and 90s. They showed a gradual overreach of power. The HOA had slowly started expanding their authority, convincing Grandpa to let them manage the community, but they had no legal right to do so. They were living off his trust, using the authority he never gave them. They'd been embezzling from the HOA treasury for years, fake invoices, inflated contracts, and now they had partnered with developers to turn this place into something unrecognizable. "Patricia's in bed with Pinnacle Development," Ellie said grimly. "They're planning to sell the land to build a massive resort, casino, hotels, a marina. It'll destroy everything." I felt sick to my stomach. "But she doesn't even own the land." "No, she doesn't," Ellie confirmed, "and we're going to make sure everyone knows it." The next morning, I woke up to find 3 more citations slapped on my cabin door. They'd started playing dirty, accusations about my lawn, my paint job, my furniture, all ridiculous violations. It was a power play, and I wasn't going to let them win. But they didn't know that I was already building my case. Each false citation, each fraudulent document was another piece of evidence against Patricia. Later that afternoon, things took a darker turn. A van from Morrison County Utilities pulled up, and workers began disconnecting my water. They handed me a work order claiming I owed $2,847 in unpaid HOA fees. It was all lies. But the utility workers weren't going to question it. They were just following orders. Soon after, the power company showed up with the same story, followed by the internet service. This wasn't harassment anymore. It was intimidation, but I was ready. That night, I called Ellie again. "I think they're moving fast now. They're trying to force me out." Ellie was quiet for a moment before responding. "It's time. We need to get those documents to the right people." I met her at her house the next morning, and we opened the safe again. This time, I found something even more damning, an entire folder on Pinnacle Development with their plans to buy the land. The deal was worth $50 million, but it would destroy everything my grandfather had fought to protect. Patricia didn't know it yet, but her empire was crumbling. By the time I made it back to the lake, everything had escalated. 3 men showed up at my cabin, claiming to be property inspectors. They were tough-looking, leather jackets, tattoos, the works. They told me it was time to leave. But I wasn't intimidated. "I think you might want to check with your boss," I said, pulling out the deed to the property. "I own this place, not Patricia, and if you want to threaten me, you better be sure you're on the right side of the law." The goons froze. Their leader repeated, "You own this place?" I nodded. The air between us changed instantly. They weren't sure what to do now. Then the media arrived. News vans pulled up, and reporters started asking questions. They'd caught wind of the growing scandal. Patricia's carefully crafted image of authority was falling apart in front of everyone. By the time the HOA meeting was called, over 200 residents had gathered, along with a swarm of reporters. Patricia took the podium, trying to maintain control, but I had other plans. I stood up, holding the original deed above my head. "This is the truth," I announced. "My grandfather owned this land, and the HOA has been stealing from us for years." The room erupted in chaos. Patricia tried to deny it, but the evidence was overwhelming. I showed them the fraudulent invoices, the secret development contracts, and the environmental impact studies that proved the land would be destroyed if Patricia's plans went through. As I handed out copies of the documents, I could see Patricia's world crumbling. Marcus tried to slip out, but Sheriff Bradley was waiting for him at the door, arrest warrant in hand. Patricia's attempt to control the community with fear had backfired spectacularly. A few days later, Patricia was arrested for embezzlement and fraud. Marcus got his own taste of justice, and Pinnacle Development was hit with massive fines. The lake was saved. My grandfather's vision for the land lived on. The community voted to dissolve the HOA and elect me as the new manager of the Morrison Nature Preserve. With the land protected, I could continue Grandpa Henry's work. I sat by the lake again, just as I had that first morning. The mist had lifted, but it was no longer just a lake. It was a symbol of everything we had fought for, everything we had won. The community was thriving, the wildlife was recovering, and the lake was safe. And somewhere, Patricia was watching it all slip away, all because of a fishing rod. Sometimes, the smallest actions lead to the biggest consequences.